Good afternoon, everybody. This is Laurie Wolf with the Foraker Group, and you have joined a Pick.Click.Give class on focusing your strategies. It is presented to you in a series of courses that we're offering to organizations that are part of Pick.Click.Give. So thanks for coming. We appreciate your participation. It's a full house today, so we're still expecting a few more people, and we will welcome them as they come. You can see each other on the screen. There are a number of ways to communicate during this class. You certainly can type your question. You can unmute yourself and ask your question out loud. It would be great to hear from you, but while you're waiting to speak, it would be very useful if you would please use the mute function either on your phone, or if you would mute yourself on your screen. You can see your name, and there's a little icon there, and it says that you can click it to mute yourself, and I encourage you to do that because we can hear all the rustling papers and doors and chit-chat and all that other fun stuff. But I would love for you to use your voice when you have questions or comments or thoughts, or you've got ideas that you would like to share. We'd love to hear your voice, so feel free to unmute yourself and jump right in. There's so many of you on this call. We're not going to do introductions today, but when you do speak to the group, it would be great just to introduce yourself and say which organization you're with. So with that, we're going to jump right in. So thanks for joining us. Great that you're all part of Pick.Click.Give. That's very exciting. In the last session, we focused on using the data that you had in front of you, and just a quick recap of that. You've now all, or should have all, received your lists if you participated in last year's Pick.Click.Give program. You've had your list, and we asked you to take, in addition to doing some wonderful thanking and recognition of the donors now that you know who they are, we asked you to take a look at your lists and ask yourself some questions. We asked you to focus on understanding of what you know about those donors. Are they new? Are they returning at the same amount? Did they increase their giving? Because remember, there are 3 goals to Pick.Click.Give. One is to increase the total number of donors who are participating in individual philanthropy in Alaska. And the other is to increase the amount of money that individuals are giving to organizations that they choose in Alaska. And the third is a more broad goal, which is to raise the level of awareness and understanding and excitement around individual giving in Alaska. So 3 primary goals, and we know that in Pick.Click.Give we are attracting a variety of donors for a variety of reasons. So taking a good look at your list and really understanding, are they new, are they returning, or are they increasing their gifts, is an excellent way to launch this kind of conversation as we go through. Because if there's one thing that we want to just stress is that there's different responses that you should have depending on the answers to these particular questions. Some additional questions that will help you focus your work if you're staring at those lists and trying to figure out what to do next with them. Here are some additional questions that you might spend some time on. If they're new, we have a list for you of if they're new donors and if they're existing donors. They may be new to you but not new to your organization. So even in the existing donor category, asking yourself who are they and how are they connected to you and what do they know about you and how do they care about you is an excellent question. So some additional questions and just some follow-up from the last class that we have to offer for you. Hopefully you've all gotten your list now and you're using your donor databases to think through and compare your lists. So in this class, we're really going to focus on trying to make the distinction for you between new donors and existing donors, and then even peeling the onion even further in terms of the different layers that you can draw from in your organization and your work around philanthropy. What we know about really sophisticated organizations who are doing sophisticated fund development work is that they are segmenting their audience over and over and over and over again to try to get to the right audience at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. A brand new organization or a less sophisticated organization is just segmenting less or not segmenting at all. The lesson learned, of course, in all good fund development is that the more you segment your audience, The more that you can not try a one-size-fits-all approach, the more successful you will be, and of course the more connected your donor will be. So what the science tells us about fundraising and motivations for giving are a few things. So this might help you as you start to segment your list. So what we know is that the very first gift that people make to an organization is often done out of impulse or emotion. So there's an emotional charge or something that's happened for them, or it's an impulsive moment. So they're scrolling through their PFD application, they get to the Pick.Click.Give section, and they feel a sense of excitement and an impulse, and they scroll the list and they go for the organization that they have some connection to, or they have that resonates somewhere in their heart, and they choose you. And that might be because they've already been in relationship with you, or that might be because your name suggests what you do and that sounds like something that's really interesting to them, or there's some other impulse or emotion, or they're sitting next to somebody who talks about that, or maybe it's a parent who is scrolling through the list with their child, and they come across an organization that's about puppies or kittens or something else that child might care about, and there's that impulse or that emotion to do that, to make that first gift. A fabulous moment, but definitely a moment around a first-time gift. When we look for subsequent gifts, and inside fundraising speak would call these annual gifts, so those subsequent gifts, what we know about those is that there's a healthy habit being created, and Pick.Click.Give is an opportunity for healthy habit. Those of you, one of the things that you could look for in your list is those donors who've been using Pick.Click.Give for a number of years in a row now, and continuing to support that healthy habit that they've created for themselves. Every organization that we work with, and even those that we don't, every nonprofit organization can create healthy habit for their donors. Think alma mater, think public radio, think United Way. They've all taken healthy habit to its maximum place, and you too can create that healthy habit. It does require, of course, internal structure on your part to be able to create that opportunity and have it be meaningful for the donor. So Pick.Click.Give is a wonderful opportunity for that, and something that you should definitely look for in those donors who are making a habit out of using Pick.Click.Give with you included in it. If we want donors to make the and gift, so they've been giving to our organizations in other ways throughout the year, and we want to encourage them to give an additional gift through Pick.Click.Give or increase their total giving using the Pick.Click.Give platform, then this has to be a really rational choice for them. And so, of course, right away you're starting to see how the language that we would use for one type of donor might be different language for the next type of donor. So this has to be a rational choice, and what we often say about that rational choice is it can't be because you need it. That's in fact not a rational choice for the donor at all. Every organization out there needs more money, so there's no rational reason right there just because you need it. There has to be a different rational choice from the donor's perspective about why they should, because if they've been a $25 donor through Pick.Click.Give year after year after year, and you'd like them to increase to $100 this year or next year, why would they do that? What would be the rational choice for them? And again, that requires different language from you to them about why that might be important. There are certainly a very small few, but there are certainly a handful of donors who are using Pick.Click.Give to make major gifts. And those gifts we say are very thoughtful in nature because they are generally in addition to the other gifts that they're giving to your organization, and they're certainly very significant, and they require lots of thinking and lots of conversation with them beforehand. And then not a Pick.Click.Give strategy, but certainly a strategy that some of you are using is asset-based gifts, and many of or a handful of probably of your Pick.Click.Give donors have probably made a asset-based or planned gift to you, and they are making a Pick.Click.Give gift to you as well. We call these gifts careful gifts because when people make these kinds of choices to leave you in your will or their life insurance or some sort of other estate vehicle or asset-based vehicle, they are doing that very carefully and usually in consultation with an estate planner or an attorney or some sort of advisor who's an expert in that area. So right away we're setting the stage for having a conversation, having different conversations with different kinds of donors depending on where their motivations are and where their conversations are already with your organization. One of the many, many reasons to segment your audience and spend that time up front really getting to know who's on your list. Any questions at this point? Take a moment to unmute your phone and ask away, or type your question if you've got it. Happy to stop and take questions along the way. So in the end, of course, the more focused we can be, the more focused we can be on the donor, the more successful we'll be overall in our organizations. If there's one key takeaway from this 45 minutes of our time together, it is this, that there is no such thing as one-size-fits-all fundraising. I don't know if any of you have ever tried on a one-size-fits-all t-shirt, but you probably didn't fit very well, and you probably didn't fit anybody that you know very well. And we see this mistake being made all the time in fundraising. Not just here in Alaska, but all over the country, where people try to write one letter, they try to write one kind of newsletter article, they try to write one kind of Facebook message, they try to write one kind of something, and they expect it to work for everybody in their system, and it just doesn't work that way. So the more you can really understand what's the best way to communicate, what's the best way to build a relationship, what's the best way to ask, and what's the best way to say thank you, the better it is for your donor, the more engaged that they will be, and the more meaningful of a relationship that you will have with your donor, potentially for a lifetime. Some organizations certainly have the capacity, the internal structure and capacity to segment their audience in many ways. Some of you may just have the capacity to segment in one or two ways. And so, of course, the easiest way to segment with a Pick.Click.Give list is first-time donors versus donors who have been with you for some time. And then if you've got a little more capacity, you could segment that third way of donors who've been making the additional gift. So there's just 3 simple ways to start to segment your audience. Any of you spent more than 3 or 4 minutes with Foraker at all in any of our fundraising courses that we offer, or any of the consultation that we provide, this is a very familiar graphic that you've seen, and we just want to provide that for you as a reminder about how the organization could be spending its time if it were focused on the donor rather than just on the strategy of asking. We see organizations many times over spending about 90% of their time on the request and very little time anywhere else. This is this time right now at Pick.Click.Give to be focusing on recognition and communicating back to your donors since you just got the list. I'm hoping you have a process in place. We've taught many classes on this topic for Pick.Click.Give and through Foraker, and if you have any questions at all, I'll give you reference back to those classes or connect back to us. We're happy to have more conversation with you about that. But this is definitely the time you're in right now, is in recognition. Then I would encourage you, of course, to come back to going back and doing your research and really figuring out who is on those lists, and I'll give you an example of that towards the end of the class. At the end of the day, in my opinion, the thing that makes this circle go round and round and round is your organization's ability to say thank you in a sincere, consistent way that is strategic. So if you have a recognition plan, you are incorporating Pick.Click.Give donors right into that plan. In fact, maybe you're even doing something extra special for them. So most of you who have been in fundraising for even just a brief amount of time, or those of you who are new to fundraising, this might be an excellent guide for you. We know that a gift is received when we communicate and ask the right person at the right time and for the right amount of money in the right way for the right reason. The most successful of our organizations will do that from a donor-centered place, so from the donor's perspective, who is the right person, what is the right time, what is the right amount of money, what is the right way, and what is the right reason. You've already seen with your Pick.Click.Give donors that one of the definitions of the right way to ask for money is through Pick.Click.Give, because you've seen them already take that step and show that that's a strategy that works for them. And so encouraging them to keep that strategy up is an excellent message for them. If you've got some donors in your database, I imagine you all have a big handful of donors in your database who have not used Pick.Click.Give as a strategy, that's certainly a question that you could investigate, whether that's a right strategy for them. So while this applies to how we might ask for money, how we might do our request, where the right person asks at the right time for the right amount of money in the right way for the right reason, it also applies to how we would communicate and build relationships with our donors. So who is the right person in your organization to do that work? It is not the same person for every kind of donor, and so it is about, again, segmenting your audience to understand that question. When is the right time for them? If you're focused on Pick.Click.Give, you might be focused internally on when the right time is, which you might say, well, the right time is really November and December if we're going to do an ask, because we know that most of Alaskans file for their PFD in the first 2 weeks of January, and so we want to make sure that our ask is out there in advance of their making that decision to make that gift in January. Of course, the right amount of money. We know that Pick.Click.Give gifts are not generally very large gifts, but they're often gifts where people are testing and testing their trust with the organization and figuring out if that's a good place for them to invest. I've seen some large gifts, but they are definitely not the norm. And of course, the right way is, again, that donor thing, and then the right reason. So this is where your excellent communication, your storytelling, and really finding out what is most important to the donor. How do they connect to your organization? What do they think is important? For those of you who are focused on being strategic in your fund development activities, this is the way that you would start to work on your fundraising plan, is to design a plan based on these characteristics and the circle of relationship that we just saw prior to this. Any questions so far? So if we look back at our circle and we think about the circle where we talk about building relationships, and I'm just going to pause right here and just ask, someone has their phone off mute and I'm just hearing some rustling of paper. So if you wouldn't mind, again, just using that mute button. Again, unmute your phone if you've got something to say. We'd love to hear your voice, but using that mute function is really important. And again, *7 if you're using a telephone, or you can click on your mute microphone right off on your screen. So again, if we go back to the circle of relationships, we are focused on building the relationship is really as simple as saying and as complicated as doing. It is about being purposeful and strategic in your communication. And so when we think about the messages that we will offer, these are some things to think about as you are contemplating your message. Of course, we've been talking about already trying to match the right message to the right donor audience. The other thing that we see often is that organizations get so excited that they're about to communicate with their donors that they often offer lots of messages at the same time. And the donor can get a little confused and not know quite what you're asking them to do. So if we're focused on providing one clear message at a time, of course that clear message is around might be around what difference the money makes, or it might have a clear call to action around asking people to continue to support your organization through Pick.Click.Give. It might be a call to action might be to ask them to tell their story, to ask them to respond, and then you're giving them an easy way to respond. I think the most important part of your message is to understand that donors are, of course, not what I call walking checkbooks. You're not just communicating with them because you want money, you're communicating with them because they care about mission. And the goal really is to be focused on the relationship and not to be focused on the money. Most organizations I know that are focused on money don't raise very much money, but those organizations that are focused on relationships tend to raise much more money, both in the short term and certainly in the long term. One of the things we also talk about in fundraising is stories, not statistics, feelings, not facts. Not sure if you've ever read a newsletter recently or any other kind of communication that's come out from an organization that's just full of statistics and facts about how wonderful and great you are. And the challenge with that is that they don't resonate to anyone but you. So often in grant writing, we do stories and statistics and feelings, not facts. When we're talking to individual donors, we want to lead with our stories. We want to lead with their stories. We want to hear their feelings. We want to express the feelings of what the difference the gifts make. We really want to lead with stories and feelings, both our own and the donors. There's lots of great ways to do that. Forakers spend a lot of time having conversations with the organizations around effective storytelling. I encourage you to use storytelling as both a method to encourage your donors to tell their stories, encourage your other stakeholders to tell their stories, encourage lots of meaningful conversation through the use of story, and really lead with the feelings. You can use the facts and the statistics to back up those stories, but don't just make that the focus of the conversation. Someone is asking me if these slides will be available after the class, and yes, we do post these. Pick.Click.Give folks post these slides. It's not an immediate posting, but they are available over time. So finally, those of you who have a communications plan or you're building a communication strategy into your fundraising plan, and even for those that are not doing that, we would encourage you at the very minimum to be consistent in your conversation. Don't just talk to people when you want money. Continue to talk to them all year long. Make sure you're communicating with them about the results of the gifts that they've given, but also the impact that your mission is having throughout the year, even when they're not actively giving a gift. As we start to segment our audience, one of the things that we realize over time is that as the donors increase their intensity of giving and just increase their connections with you, what is required of you in your communication is to offer more opportunities to be involved, more opportunities to build trust, more accountability and transparency of your organization and how it's spending the money and what difference it's truly making, and how effective you are at actually making a difference. Of course, donors also want to feel appreciated, and it's one of the easiest ways, I think, to build trust is to make sure that you're circling back with them and letting them know that you received their gift. Not only does that build trust between the donor and the organization, but in this case, it also builds trust in the program overall. Letting donors know that you received their gift through a state program or a program run through the state of Alaska is an amazing way to help build trust for the program. So making sure you're doing that consistent follow-up and consistent acknowledgement. And then just an overall commitment to the relationship. If you have a first-time donor, you may not know them, and so the relationship may be a little bit at the surface, and so the goal is to just keep reaching out and connecting and figuring out different ways to stay connected to that donor and that donor stay connected to you. One of the things that we often talk around in the trust, accountability, and transparency category, I often use an example where I think about, you know, the cute kids that stand out in front of grocery stores all across Alaska, and you know, maybe they have a cute puppy in their hand and they want $5 to save dogs, and well, you know, the puppy's cute and the kid is cute, and you know, $5 doesn't seem like that big of an ask, and so, you know, about probably half of you are handing that cute child with that cute puppy $5. You're not asking too many questions. You know that money, or you hope that money will be spent to save dogs. You really don't know, but you hope it is, and so you do that. But if that same cute child with that same cute puppy came out and started to ask you for $500 or asked you to give your entire dividend to the organization, well, suddenly you've got some questions, and suddenly you start to feel a little uncomfortable, because truly that cute child with that cute puppy really doesn't have your trust. They're not offering accountability about how the money will be spent or where it will go and where it will be funneled, and there's very little transparency being offered in that immediate moment. And so we start to think about that example as an opportunity to think about the ways that we're communicating with our donors. If you would like donors to use Pick.Click.Give as a and strategy, as a strategy where they are starting to increase their giving to you, where every year they give more and more of their dividend and it comes to your organization, then trust, accountability, and transparency become critically important in the messaging that you put out there. It is an opportunity to really focus in on helping the donor feel that sense of connection to your organization in a different way than the gift that they might have given a year ago through Pick.Click.Give with a $25 gift, or the $25 that they gave when they came to one of your events, or where they really didn't know you. Because remember, those very first time donors, they don't really know you. The first gift they're giving is out of impulse or emotion. And so this is a trust building activity for them, that very first gift. So when we think about what some good messages are for each group, of course we always have to start with who are they, and here's some other questions that you can ask to start to hone in on your message. What do they know now? So if you think about a group of donors from that you've identified in your Pick.Click.Give, you might say, well, what do they know about us now? Do they know what we do? Do they even know who we are? Do they care about the cause? And do they even know the mission? So what we know about younger donors who are giving philanthropic gifts all over the world, all over this country, and here, of course, in Alaska, is that they care about cause before they care about mission. They care about the bigger idea before they care about the exact organization. And they are not as brand loyal as their grandparents were. And so maybe what they know because of based on your name only is they know the cause, but they may not know you. So what do they know now is an excellent question to be asking. And how can you get to know them better? Right? But remember, at the end of the day, philanthropy is not about you, it's about the donor. So how can you get to know your donor better? How can they connect more to mission? Because if they connect more to mission, my guess is, for most of you, if people have an opportunity to connect more to mission, they're going to stick around because you are all doing pretty amazing work. Now, for some of you, mission connection directly, it would not be appropriate. And so for those of you where that's not an appropriate moment for them to be physically connected, we might think about how they could be emotionally connected, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But emotional connection requires, of course, the good use of story. And who is the right messenger? Again, you may not always be the right messenger, and that's including if you're delivering your message in a written format or in a verbal format. Who is the right messenger? Who signs the letter? Who writes the newsletter? Who posts the Facebook post? Who is the right messenger? Who sends the email? Not always the same messenger every time. The default button in most organizations, if you've got staff, is to have staff do it. That's not always the right messenger. And in fact, the bigger the donor, the more that's probably never the right messenger. So we really want to make sure that we are offering a variety of messengers to the right people at the right time. And of course, then what's the right way to deliver that message? The challenge with Pick.Click.Give is you don't have electronic means of communication with them. You don't know their email addresses if they're brand new donors. You don't know, you could Google them and try to figure it out, but you are given a snail mail address. So that is the opportunity that you have to connect with them at the beginning. So that might be your only way at the moment, but if they are donors who've been with you a while, then maybe you do have more information about them. You could certainly strategize other ways to try to help them communicate to you what other right ways to communicate by giving them the ability to provide you with their email address or other forms of communication. So again, we need to be able to invite our donors to participate in mission by offering them opportunities for either physical or emotional connection. Someone's asking if a survey would be appropriate, and I think it would be appropriate. I wouldn't make it a big, long, drawn-out survey, but I might do a 3 or 4 or 5 question survey that was quick and easy to respond to, and just to try to get to know the donors a little bit better, and so and to offer them something about you so that they can feel that connection right back. So using the survey as a trust-building tool, I think, is an excellent opportunity. Now, you probably won't get huge participation, but the participation you will get will certainly tell you about that donor's interest. And again, you need to make it as easy for them to respond as possible. So while you might only have a snail mail address to send them that survey, and you could even include that in your thank you letter, or you could use that as a follow-up after your thank you letter that goes out, maybe you're going to ask them to respond by clicking on your website or clicking on something else into the internet world, or maybe it's a paper survey and you can have them fill it out that way, and you're going to ask them for their other ways that they'd like to communicate with you. Certainly a variety of options for you to explore, but I think if you made it easy and fun, and fun, I always like to remind people, right? Fun is the first 3 letters of the word fundraising, so this should be fun. As long as you make it fun and you don't ask for money again right there, I think it would be a great idea. I think the other thing to remember is that there's a handful of you on this call who have enormous numbers of Pick.Click.Give donors, and that is very exciting. Congratulations. Awesome job. And what I also want to say is don't be overwhelmed by this conversation. You don't have to get specific for every single donor individually. You can do this by groups. You can group people up based on different things that you know about them. Again, kind of all first-time donors could be kind of one grouping, and all increasing donors could be another grouping. It's not a perfect science, but you do need to keep it manageable for you. And maybe that's just too much. If you're trying to engage your board members or other volunteers, you might ask, which of your board members are willing to take and hug a Pick.Click.Give donor for a month. Maybe that's they're writing them a handwritten card, or maybe they're reaching out with the survey results, or maybe they're doing something else. But you're not asking them to embrace all of your Pick.Click.Give donors. Maybe you're just asking them to embrace some of them. And again, probably not 100% board participation in this effort, but some board members participating. Again, some volunteers participating, maybe even some additional staff participating. So you really want to be strategic in the way that you do this, so that you don't overwhelm, you don't overwhelm yourself, you don't overwhelm your infrastructure, and you can provide excellent follow-through. I'd rather have you have, a really wonderful strategy to communicate really well with a handful of donors and do it spectacularly than try to do it with everyone and do it very poorly. So, and every one of you on this call will have a different definition of that. So some signs of emotional or physical involvement, obviously if they answer that survey tool that you're going to put out there, that's a great sign. But one of the signs is, of course, that you know them, that they're no longer strangers to you. And what I mean by you know them is that you know what their interests are, that you really can say, oh, what I know about that handful of donors or those particular donors is that they really care about the organization in this way or that way, and these are the programs that they care about, or this is how they got connected to us, or we know them because that we were connected to their extended family or other things like that. Of course, one of the ultimate definitions of connection or signs of connection is that they start to sound like you. They start to express the organization's core values. They start to sound like what's important to the organization. They can start saying that themselves. They're not actually sounding like they're reciting the Pledge of Allegiance of your mission statement, but they certainly have that feeling and that sense that they really know what the organization is about, and they can reflect that back in their own language. And of course, then there are some more obvious things. They start to ask questions, they make comments, they offer suggestions. This could happen in the bread aisle at the grocery store, or it could happen in a more formal setting. I just did a quick brainstorm of some ways that you might think about engaging donors in mission. This is a big, gigantic list, but I thought I'd make it pretty diverse because lots of you have lots of different opportunities. And I think all of these ways for the right donor at the right time can be an excellent opportunity to engage them in mission. Remember that every step of the way in the cycle of relationship building is helping the donor feel more connected to mission and on their own terms in the way that works for them. And so here's just a huge handful of ideas about some ways that you might get into that. I'm not going to go into all of these. Some of them are certainly very self-explanatory, but I'll just highlight a couple. The first one is probably my favorite, which is creating opportunities to invite the donor to tell their story of connection. So rather than you just putting your story out there about the difference that the mission makes, really inviting the donor to tell their story. It's an awesome way to get them and to feel that connection. Of course, creating opportunities for input, that survey idea is a great example there. Asking them to, if you know them, asking them to step up as volunteers can be an awesome connection there. We know that volunteers are 2/3 more likely to stay donors than non-volunteers, and of course that's because they have that connection. So for some of you, maybe it's asking for that in-kind contribution that's a no-brainer for them. Maybe you know that they work for some a small business or a large business where they can offer some sort of in-kind contribution, and it just feels it's super easy for them, but it makes a big difference for the organization. That's a real good feel-good all the way around, saves on the budget for you, makes them feel great, offers opportunities to say thank you more often, so that can be really fun. Certainly our media can be friendly to the nonprofit sector, and so when you're going to be in the news, making sure you're giving that a nice heads up to those donors that something happy is going to happen, or maybe there's a Pick.Click.Give story that's going to roll in the news that you have a heads up about, and so you want to give your donors a heads up about that as well, so they can feel that sense of excitement that they're part of something greater than they could be all by themselves, which is really one of the gifts of Pick.Click.Give. And of course, you know, there's the standard issue stuff that lots of you are already doing, the tours and lunches and presentations and all the ways that you're communicating and putting information out through your newsletters and other publications. So just thinking about ways to engage the donors, make it about them, including them, not just around where you make a list and say thanks for the money. Okay. So just a big wide list. I'm sure you also have tons more ideas. Feel free to chat them in the chat bar if you've been doing other ways to engage your Pick.Click.Give donors. We'd love to see a big long list get created in the chat bar, so feel free to type those in if you've had some success and you want to share some of your successes with your fellow folks here. So I did just try a strategy here to just give you a sense of how you could start to customize. Of course, I don't know your donors, so I don't know. I couldn't make it completely customized because I don't know who your donors are, only you do. But here are some ideas about how you might spend your time if you were going and being donor focused. And I did this based on if it was a brand new donor through Pick.Click.Give. So here's some ideas about how you might spend that 30% of your time doing research, some things that you might ask yourself and some work that you might do. Here's some things around how you might spend your 30% of your time building relationships, very particularly with this new group of donors. And notice I have that 3 to 5 question survey there in which it is really focused on getting to know them. You might and so just a series of ideas about things that you might do there. And that would start, of course, right now with that thank you note where you might include a little one-page sheet that tells a fabulous story or invites other stories. Of course, if they're Pick.Click.Give donors, you're going to circle back with them in December. Some of you have circled back in November. Lots of you are going to circle back in December and do that donor request, that very specific donor request around making Pick.Click.Give their healthy habit for the year. And then, of course, what makes the circle go round and round and round in relationships is our ability to do recognition. And many of you are doing that work right now. And there's lots of opportunities to do that work. So you'll probably come back to recognition a little bit, just the cycle that we're in right now. You might go recognition, back to research, relationships requests, back to recognition. So you might actually, most of you are hanging out in the recognition stage at the moment. So hopefully I've left a little time here, about 5 minutes or so, for some follow-up questions, and hopefully this has given you some ideas and spurred your thinking about how you might segment your audience, how you might focus your strategies, how you might be committed to not being a one-size-fits-all organization where you're really focusing in, segmenting your groups, focusing your conversation, giving different people in your organization different jobs around communication, and really being ultimately donor-centered rather than organizational-centered. So I've left some time for questions, comments, thoughts. Love to hear them. Feel free to unmute your phone. What do I mean by donor disclosure? Yeah, so Is that on this list? Donor disclosure. So what I mean by that is, what did the donor tell you about them? What are they? What do you know about them? Are they anonymous? Did they let you know? So lots of donors are right. Here's the challenge in recognition. Those of you who've been in the program for a while, you know that there's this lag time, right? So donors make a decision to give through Pick.Click.Give to your organization January through March. And then the time is up for most people. There's a few opportunities for the most part, but though most donors are making that decision January through March. And then there's this big lag time until October, to where you find, or November in this case, where you have found out the names of your donors. So some organizations are making a big effort in the recognition phase throughout the year of trying to help their donors disclose that they are Pick.Click.Give donors, so that you can thank them early and often, is what I often say. So you're not waiting till you get your list, your official list, but you're inviting donors to share with you that they are Pick.Click.Give donors throughout the year, and not just waiting for the magic list to show up on your doorstep in November. So that's what I mean by donor disclosure, is helping your donors feel excited to tell you that they are Pick.Click.Give donors throughout the whole year, rather than just waiting till you get the list. So that's what I mean by that. Thanks for asking that. More questions? And feel free, if anyone's done some of this work around relationship building, I'd love to hear some examples of some under relationship building where people have offered opportunities to connect to mission, something fun, low cost or no cost that's mission driven. If anyone's done that with your Pick.Click.Give donors, I would love to hear that story. Well, I do encourage you to keep exploring what it looks like for your organization to be donor focused. Again, my hope for you is that anything that you do, you can provide follow-through on. If you made promises to donors, make sure you're giving that follow-through, and overall that you're committed in your organization to be donor service, and really understanding that it takes an entire organization to be donor focused. It's not just one person's job. It's not a single person's job description. It's everybody's job to be donor focused. So thinking about how you have that conversation in your whole organization. We'd love to hear your success stories. Please feel free to email us at any time and let us know how it's going. Someone is asking how you get more stickers. The next call, I believe, on Pick.Click.Give is launching the all the marketing materials. And if you email the through Pick.Click.Give, if you click on the Contact Us button, I think you can make a request for stickers and things like that. That's handled through Heather Beatty at the Pick.Click, who's the program manager for Pick.Click.Give. And I don't do all those materials, so she's your person. Those would be awesome to give to donors as a gift. What a great idea. That's a great idea. Someone saying that to give those Love Alaska stickers to donors. It's a great idea. Lovely way to say thank you. I'm happy to stay on the call for a few more minutes if you've got questions. Otherwise, I encourage you all to enjoy this. If you're in Anchorage, it's a beautiful sunny day. I hope you have a great day out there. If you're out there in the rest of the state, hopefully you're having good weather, and we'll talk to you again soon.